revelation that the veil has been lifted and it's time for you to know the truth. So let's embark on a journey that will transform the way you perceive yourself, your reality, and the power within you. You see, when people reach a certain moment in their lives, something magical happens. They start overcoming themselves. They find themselves in that perfect place to create. Now, let me share my definition of creation. It's when you forget about yourself. That's when true freedom emerges. Meditation, often misunderstood, is about becoming familiar with yourself. Some say don't focus on the negative, but let's be real. 95% of who you are is intertwined with those aspects. To truly create, you need to dismantle the old personality, denature the cravings, and come up against emotional hurdles. Picture this. It's 8 o'clock in the morning and you're in the midst of your meditation. You're breaking the routine and your body is screaming, you're off schedule. It tries to pull you back to a familiar state, even bringing up past experiences to trigger anger. Becoming aware of this is where the game begins. Now you're working to stay conscious, not slipping back into unconscious patterns. It demands incredible awareness, a great amount of consciousness, and the necessity to raise your energy. Consciousness and energy go hand in hand. To be conscious, you need energy. You can't separate the two. Raising your energy is crucial, otherwise you risk being consumed. Becoming familiar with unconscious thoughts is the key. If you sense these thoughts before they surface, you can start rewiring your brain. Imagine starting your day by asking yourself, who am I going to be when I open my eyes? How am I going to make a difference in the world today? By closing your eyes and rehearsing your actions, you're fooling your brain. It doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination. You're installing the neurological hardware to create a map to the future, not just a record of the past. Let's dive into the fascinating journey of transforming our minds, moving from hardware to software and mastering the present moment. Imagine your brain as hardware, like the computer that runs many programs. Consistency is like hitting the same keys on your keyboard day after day. As you keep at it, the neurological hardware of your brain starts to change. It's like upgrading from an old version to a new one, turning it into a software program. So, what happens when your brain becomes a software program? You start acting like a happy person because you've installed the circuits for happiness. It's like training your brain to respond positively to the world around you. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. It's a bit like learning to ride a bike. Challenging at first, but soon it becomes second nature. Now, let's talk about making your thoughts more real than anything else. Close your eyes and disconnect from the hustle and bustle of the world. Reduce the sensory input, the noise, the distractions, and focus on your heart. It might sound simple, but it's a powerful technique. By doing this, you are creating an environment where your thoughts can take center stage. Moving on to mastering the present moment, it's like being the captain of your own ship, navigating the waters of time. Placing your attention in the present moment is like grabbing the steering wheel and taking control. And guess what? This gives you incredible energy. It's not the kind of energy that comes from a cup of coffee. It's the deep, internal energy that empowers you to do amazing things. When you're present, you're not stuck in the predictable future or dwelling in the familiar past. You're right here, right now. It's like being the hero of your own story, not letting external influences dictate the plot. You're taking your power back from all those things and people that used to pull you in different directions. In the present moment, you become a powerhouse of energy. It's like having a supercharged battery ready to fuel your endeavors. Whether it's pursuing your passions, building meaningful relationships, or achieving personal goals, the present moment is your source of strength. We are reality-producing machines. Every human being is in one of two states of mind, creation or survival. Creation is about growth, expansion, health, and emotions like love and joy. Survival, on the other hand, is stress-induced, leading to imbalance, disease, and selfishness. The size of our brains allows us to trigger the stress response just by thought alone. Continuous stress creates a new balance of imbalance, leading to contraction, disease, and a lack of health. The chemicals released during stress endorse the ego, making us more self-indulgent and self-important. Breaking through this cycle is liberating, transforming anger, hatred, and prejudice into joy. True self-love is a profound journey, a transformative process that unfolds when you liberate yourself from the chains of memorized emotions. Picture these emotions as shackles holding you back, keeping you tethered to past experiences and limiting beliefs. Breaking through these chains is no easy feat. It requires stepping into the uncomfortable and embracing the discomfort that comes with breaking the addiction to familiar patterns. To truly understand self-love, you must envision it as a process of liberation. It's about freeing the body from the clutches of emotional bondage and allowing it to expand into its natural state of being. This expansion goes beyond the physical. It extends to your thoughts, actions, and feelings. It's a journey of going further than you ever thought possible, transcending the limitations that once defined your existence. Imagine self-love as the ultimate act of rebellion against the constraints of your own mind. It's a rebellion that starts with acknowledging and confronting the discomfort that arises when you challenge ingrained patterns. These patterns are like well-worn grooves in the mind, dictating your responses, decisions, and perceptions. Breaking free from them requires a willingness to be uncomfortable, to face the unknown, and to let go of the security provided by the familiar. Embracing discomfort is not about self-punishment. It's a courageous act of self-discovery. It's an acknowledgement that growth and transformation often arise from the uncharted territories of the unfamiliar. It's stepping into the discomfort with the understanding that, on the other side, lies the freedom to create a new narrative for your life. Liberating the body from memorized emotions involves a conscious effort to disrupt the habitual cycles of thought, action, and feeling. It's a commitment to dismantling the old self, shedding the layers that no longer serve you. This process is akin to peeling away the layers of an onion, revealing the core essence of your being. Reprogramming the mind is an integral part of this journey. It goes beyond merely changing your thoughts. It involves a holistic transformation of your entire being. This shift encompasses your neurology, the intricate wiring of your brain, your circuitry, the patterns of behavior ingrained over time, and your chemistry, the emotional responses that influence your well-being. This process of reprogramming is not a superficial change. It's a profound alteration that impacts your expression of health and life at a fundamental level. It's rewiring the way your brain perceives the world, fostering new neural connections that support positive and empowering beliefs. The transformation extends beyond the mental realm, affecting the very chemistry of your emotions, signaling genes to express a healthier and more vibrant version of yourself. The veil has been lifted, and now you know the truth. Embrace the power within you to create, to overcome yourself, and to master the present moment. Start your day by setting the tone for who you want to be. Break the cycle of stress and survival, and liberate yourself to experience true self-love and joy. You are a reality-producing machine, and your thoughts have the power to shape your reality. The choice is yours. Will you continue living in survival mode, or will you step into the realm of creation? The power lies within you. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. So if you take a thought, thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. So if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say you have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, your attitudes are just shortened states of being. You feel good in the morning, you feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I know from the research that we've done that the redundancy of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time, for example, a person has an insecure thought, then they feel insecure. The moment they feel insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. They fire and wire more circuits in their brain to feel more chemicals of insecurity, and then once they're feeling insecure, they think more insecure thoughts, and they do this over and over again. The redundancy and the repetition of that cycle over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. Once the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. It turns out that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old, are a set of habituations, unconscious thoughts, unconscious behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions that function like a subconscious computer program. So back to beliefs. An attitude, an attitude, an attitude are shortened states of being, and you combine them together then. Then a belief, then the cycle of thinking and feeling over time creates a subconscious state of being. I don't move past the word visualization because I think it kind of conjures up a little bit too much of a spiritual association. The word that's used in science is called mental rehearsal. In mental rehearsal, there's two types of mental rehearsal. There's what's called internal mental imaging, which means you're in the scene as the first person experiencing it. And then there's called external mental imaging, which is you're observing yourself in the scene. It turns out that when you are actually in the first person and not the third person, that action of rehearsing what you're doing produces the strong biological change. Now let's talk about this. You can take a group of people that have never played the piano before, and you can do a functional brain scan on them, and then you can teach them one-handed scales and chords, and they'll practice those chords 2 hours a day for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, they grow a whole new set of circuits on the opposite side of the brain. Well, that makes sense. You learn something new. Learning is making new synaptic connections. You get your body involved with some instruction. When you get your body involved, you're going to have a new experience. Experience enriches the brain. You pay attention to what you're doing. You've got to pay attention. You have to stay present. And if you repeat it over and over again, firing and wiring, you assemble new networks of neurons equal to your experience. Nothing new there. But you can take a group of people and you can have them close their eyes to a brain scan on them before the experiment. 5 days later, do a brain scan after. And for 2 hours a day, they mentally rehearse playing those scales and chords. At the end of 5 days, they grow the same amount of circuits in their brain as the people actually physically doing the exercise. So what's the relevance? Number one, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. So the thought becomes the experience, and the brain looks like it's been playing the piano for the last 5 days, but they never lifted a finger. Now, from a biological standpoint, our brains are a record of the past. They're an artifact of everything we've learned and experienced to this moment. When we prime the brain to change its circuitry before the experience, Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's now a map to the future. And so as we warm up those brain circuits, it's more easy for us to slip into a supernatural behavior. If you take those people and you set them from the piano, and they've never played the piano before, but they've been mentally rehearsing for the last 5 days, they'll play those scales and chords. Like magic, they just learned how to do it just by changing their internal state. Take a group of men, you can have them close their eyes and for an hour a day mentally rehearse doing bicep curls over and over again, and they add an emotional component called harder, stronger, more intense, and they put themselves in that first-person internal mental image. At the end of 2 weeks, they have a 13.5 increase in muscle strength, and they've never performed the activity. Not only is the brain changed to look like the experience has already occurred, now the body has changed by thought alone. The body looks like it's been working out for the last 2 weeks. So then the power of mental rehearsal, of imaging, primes the brain and body to look like the future has already occurred. And when you set the extent of your limit and you can image what you can do even further than what's normal, then you are stepping into the unknown. And of course, then your body is going to follow your mind because the experience has already happened. You know, the challenge behind all of this is that people have to understand that there is a journey that they have to take. In other words, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who we are is a habit, and it's programmed in the body to keep doing something so many times the body knows now how to do it better than your brain. So if that's 95% of who we are, the body becomes the mind, and most of the time people are unconscious. You see, the thoughts that you think are the electrical charge in the quantum field. The feelings that you emote are the magnetic charge in the quantum field. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the event back. So if you are walking around your life feeling sorry for yourself and feeling like a victim, you are broadcasting that signature into the field. And you will create more experiences to suffer. Because we are not punished for our sins, we are punished by our sins. And sin is an attitude, and sin is how you think and how you feel. So then when you cause people to give up their guilt and their shame and their unworthiness and teach them how to open their heart and create coherent waves in their brain and in their heart, they are going to produce the miraculous. It takes training. And it takes practice, and it takes learning new information and deprogramming ourselves into believing that we are limited. But if you are living by the hormones of stress and you have no energy, no field, then you can't produce an effect on matter. So then life is about the management of energy. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And if your attention is on the knowns and the predictable future, or your attention is on the familiar emotions of the past, you are siphoning energy out of the present moment, and you have no energy to create with. And when you are able to do this and practice it really well, you will begin to do what is innately your birthright, and that is to create an unknown or wonderful experience in your life. So it just takes practice in order to do it. What we noticed in our research, to finish that other thought, is that there comes a moment when you are in that coherent level of alpha, and all of a sudden you slip into theta. And all of a sudden when theta turns on, all of a sudden you start seeing this amazing change take place, and the body becomes so relaxed, and the energy centers, the sympathetic nervous system, switches on. But instead of switching on like you are being chased by a tiger, or switching on like having an orgasm or ejaculating, or switching on for whatever reason, it is switching on in balance with the parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system settles the body down, but now the sympathetic nervous system turns on. And here comes that energy, and whoosh, it travels right up the central nervous system, and it hits the brainstem, switches on what is called the thalamic gate, the reticular activating system. All that energy now hits the train station, the docking station where all the neurons go, and boom, it hits the neocortex. And now you are producing gamma brainwave patterns, and gamma brainwaves are superconscious brainwave patterns. In other words, the inner world is the real world. The experience is so profound energetically that you never forget the moment. You just take a methyl group and twist it, and it turns up. Then if you take melatonin and you change it again, it creates a phospholuminescent chemical, the same chemical found in the electric eel. Now what is that? The neurons are just filled with energy, and there's a glow. The neurons now are heightened and they're storing energy, and that's what gives those colors and patterns during the experience. If you switch that molecule again, it turns into the chemical that you find in mammals that are hibernating. In other words, no sex drive, no appetite, the body's in stasis. You're no longer having any drives. What a time to dream, what a time to create a future, when the body is no longer the mind. Take that chemical and tweak it again, and it's the most powerful hallucinogenic known to man. Now you're talking about the God molecule. You're talking about the inner world as the real world, and now you are walking into a dimension. This is where you go from space-time into time-space. That's the vision quest or the lucid experience or whatever mystical moment that has been talked about for antiquity. It takes a little bit to get people to this point, but when the neurotransmitters change, the chemicals are a downward causation of a shift in consciousness. When that happens, holy hell, because the person will never be the same. I've had experiences, I understand them. You can't go back to business as usual after a few of those. I think my interest is to demystify this, right? Let's demystify it. You teach people information, you teach them how to do it, and then it creates transformation, right? If we can measure transformation, that's more information to teach transformation better, and we can close the gap. So in one of our advanced workshops, we actually did extensive meditation. One of the things I've realized in my own personal experience is that you have to go past the point where you want to lay down in your meditation. There comes a point when you want to lay down or you want to give up or stop. If you go a little bit past that point and you sit up a little bit longer and then you lay down, and you can do it early in the morning because the neurotransmitters are just right. So now people then get caught up in an emotion. They reaffirm their identity. They could wake up in the morning and feel nothing at all. And then all of a sudden they say, well, wait a second, I've got to get back to myself. So they start thinking about their problems, and here come the emotions. And they say, oh, now I feel like me again. So those emotions then begin to influence our thoughts. Like if you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And when you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. And when you feel like a failure, you're going to think more thoughts equal to being a failure. And the cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking causes you to say, I am a failure. And the repetition of that process of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking conditions the body to become the mind of that emotion. Now the emotion is stored in the body. Now the body's literally in the past. And the body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the actual experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body's believing it's in the same experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So getting people out of the past is the work. So then they wake up in the morning after they reaffirm who they are, and they can't think greater than how they feel. They're in the familiar past. So if you're in the familiar past, you're going to do the things that reaffirm the emotions of your predictable future. So you wake up in the morning, you check your WhatsApp, you check your text, you check your Twitter, you tweet, you check your Facebook, you check your email, you check the news. Now you are really connected to everything that's known in your life. And then you run through a series of routine behaviors. You move around your house the same way you always do. You do all the same things. You go to the same grocery store, you buy the same food, you shop the same way. The best way to predict your future is to create it, not in the known, right there. That uncertainty, you can learn now how to regulate your state instead of living in fear, because the idea that things are going to get worse, the idea that you can't predict, the idea of being uncertain or can't control something actually sets off the stress response. So now you're in the unknown and this survival gene is switched on. Of course, people are going out of the infinite possibilities that exist in the quantum field. They're going to select the worst scenario in their mind, right? So then, what if you're in the unknown and you understand that, and now you can work back into that present moment and you say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain, put my attention behind? What behaviors today, one day, what behaviors do I want to demonstrate? And the act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Fifth dimensional creation has nothing to do with going anywhere to get anything. Because if you combine a clear intention, a coherent thought, coherent brainwave pattern with a coherent heart, moving into that elevated emotion, thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. The magnetism of this center becomes the energy. The intention is carried on that energy, and now you are broadcasting a new signature into the quantum field. Now, if it's done properly and you understand the mechanics in fifth dimensional creation, you are not going anywhere to get anything. You are actually collapsing space and time, and you are drawing the experience to you. You are the vortex, because when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential that exists in the quantum field, like tuning a radio dial, when you lock into that frequency, if you keep revisiting that energetic signature over again every single day, then you don't have to go anywhere and get it. The new job finds you, the new house actually finds you, the new relationship finds you, because you are the vortex that's drawing the experience to you. So if you're truly in the creative process, my definition of creation is when I forget about me. I become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, in no time. I become pure consciousness. And the moment I reach that elegant moment of the generous present moment, all possibilities in the quantum field exist truly when our brain and body are in the present moment. Getting there is the work. So then most people then create reality from what we call three-dimensional creation. So change the field and you change matter. There's only two components according to the research that shows how to change the field. Here's an example. They did an experiment where they took a group of people that were great healers, and they took these vials of DNA and set them out in front of these people. And they said, now listen, this is a mindful function. With all of your intention, we want you to see this DNA wind or unwind in your mind. Just keep seeing it wind or unwind, wind or unwind. So they did it over and over again, over and over again. They checked the DNA. Guess what happened? Nothing. Intention did nothing to change the DNA. So then they said, okay, open your heart, create an elevated emotion, and just feel gratitude and radiate that feeling of care and love into the field. And let's see if that changes the DNA. They elevate their emotional state. They do it for a period of time. They check the DNA. Guess what happens? Nothing. But when they say to the people, what I want you to do is see the DNA unwind intention one frequency, the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feel the emotions you would feel as if it already unwound elevated emotion, magnetic field in the quantum. Over 20% of the DNA unwound at a remote location. So thought being the electrical charge in the quantum field, feelings being the magnetic charge. How you think and how you feel broadcasts a field. So now not just any type of field is going to do that, it's got to be coherent. So we practice creating brain coherence. We actually measure it. We practice creating heart coherence. Why? Because once energy moves right up in here and you can change resentment or frustration or impatience to joy, to freedom, to gratitude, and we're measuring to see if you're doing it. So as a person started to contemplate and think about, who do I want to be when I open my eyes? What would it be like to be happy? What would it be like to live a new life? The frontal lobe is looking out into the landscape of the entire brain because it has connections to the entire neocortex, and it's got to resolve the problem. So it starts calling up different networks of neurons that are relevant to the question based on the knowledge the person learns or the experiences that they had in it. Begins to seamlessly piece together this new understanding, and that's called intention. And so if you're reading a book about how to become more happy, or if you're reading a book on how to be a leader in your life, or you're studying the process, every time you learn something new, you add new connections to your brains and raw materials for you to imagine even more. The act of mentally rehearsing begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like it's already happened. Now, the brain is typically a record of the past, but the moment we install the neurological hardware, it becomes a map to the future. And you keep doing that, the hardware becomes a software program, which means you start thinking like a genius. You start acting like a happy person because there's no mystery there because you installed the circuits. And then these people didn't wait for their wealth or their health to feel gratitude and to feel empowered or to feel love, a love for life. They began to feel those emotions ahead of the experience, and their body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the experience and their life that creates the emotion and their emotion that they're creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's living in the future in the present moment. And the stronger the emotion that they felt, the more they're going to pay attention to the thoughts they're creating.